They didn't ban these technologies because they were dangerous. They banned them because they worked too well. Peasants were outproducing kingdoms. Blacksmiths were solving problems that stumped royal engineers. And the one device that terrified rulers most, it could be built by a child. Medieval peasants were heating their homes with almost no wood, while modern homeowners are out there burning through cords of firewood like it's going out of style. Here's how they did it. They built these horizontal chimney systems that ran underneath stone benches and floors. You'd light a tiny fire, and the hot gases would snake through channels beneath you before finally exiting. The stone absorbed all that heat and released it slowly for hours. We're talking about heating an entire room with literally a handful of twigs. Now here's what gets me. These rocket mass heaters, as they're called today, use 80 to 90% less wood than your standard wood stove. And they produce almost no smoke. Russian scientists actually studied traditional Russian stove designs and found they hit combustion temperatures of 1800 degrees Fahrenheit. At that temperature, you're burning off nearly all the pollutants. So why can't you legally build one? Modern building codes ban them in most areas, not because they're dangerous, but because they don't fit into neat inspection categories. The inspector shows up, flips through his checklist, can't find horizontal underground chimney system, and stamps it rejected. Meanwhile, folks living off-grid in rural Montana have been quietly using these for decades. Their heating costs? $0. Even through winters that would make a polar bear complain. The thermal mass stores heat for 12 to 24 hours. One small fire per day. That's it. But combustion efficiency is just the beginning. What if I told you medieval builders also figured out walls that literally heal themselves? Here's the thing about modern buildings. They're falling apart, and I mean that literally. Concrete structures from the 1960s are already getting demolished. Meanwhile, cathedrals built 800 years ago, still standing, still solid, still looking better than your local shopping mall. The secret was lime mortar. Medieval builders mixed quickite with sand to create something that modern engineers are only now admitting was pure genius. See, this stuff could flex with building movement instead of cracking, but here's where it gets wild. It healed itself. When lime mortar cracks, it absorbs carbon dioxide straight from the air and slowly recrystallizes. The material literally grows back together like some kind of construction-grade Wolverine. Modern Portland cement can't do that. It just cracks, traps moisture inside your walls, and turns your building into an expensive pile of rubble. So why'd we switch? Speed. Portland cement sets faster, which means contractors move quicker, which means more profit. Nobody cared that buildings would crumble in 50 years because nobody planned to be around for the complaints. But here's the kicker. The Vatican figured this out the hard way. They'd been using modern cement for restorations and noticed it was actually destroying their ancient walls, so they quietly switched back to lime mortar. The Catholic Church literally went medieval on their repair schedule. And the best part? You can make this stuff yourself. Burn some limestone, slake it in water, mix with local sand. Speaking of forgotten building techniques that actually work better than modern alternatives, now this one might be the most clever trick medieval people ever figured out. They discovered that cutting a tree down doesn't kill it. It makes it stronger. Medieval foresters would chop trees right down to the stump, and instead of dying, those stumps would explode with new shoots, multiple trunks growing where one stood before. Come back in 7 to 10 years, harvest again. Repeat forever. They called it coppicing, and it's basically a cheat code for unlimited wood. Here's where it gets wild. A coppiced hazel tree can live for over 1,000 years. The same stump producing harvestable wood every decade for a millennium. Your great-great-great-grandchildren could be cutting from the same tree you planted. But try doing this today? Good luck. Most public lands have banned the practice entirely. Forestry agencies want tall, single-trunk trees for timber production. Coppicing doesn't fit their spreadsheets. Meanwhile, studies from the UK found something fascinating. Coppiced woodlands support 50% more wildlife than standard forests. The varied light conditions create diverse habitats. Birds, insects, small mammals, they all thrive. 1 acre of properly managed coppiced woodland provides all the firewood, fence posts, and tool handles a family needs. Forever. No annual seed costs, no replanting, no fertilizer. Oak, willow, ash, maple, these all coppice beautifully. Trees growing across most of rural America. The medieval peasant had perpetual wood supply figured out. We made it illegal. But speaking of things growing underground, the next entry involves digging into the earth itself. Your walls are making you sick. And no, I'm not being dramatic. Medieval homes use clay plasters mixed with straw, horsehair, and yes, actual manure. Sounds disgusting, right? But here's what modern scientists discovered. These walls could breathe. Clay naturally absorbs moisture when humidity gets too high, then releases it back when the air dries out. Your home basically had built-in climate control. No electricity, no fancy HVAC systems. Just dirt doing what dirt does. German researchers tested this recently. Rooms with clay-plastered walls maintain 40 to 60% humidity year-round. Automatically, that's the sweet spot where mold can't grow, and your sinuses don't feel like the Sahara Desert. Now about that manure, I know what you're thinking, but medieval builders weren't just being weird. The digestive enzymes in horse dung actually break down clay particles, making the plaster smoother and easier to apply. They figured this out through centuries of trial and error. No chemistry degree required. Here's the kicker. Modern building codes require gypsum drywall or cement stucco. Earthen plasters, banned in most places. Meanwhile, adobe homes in New Mexico with 400-year-old earth plasters still outperform brand new drywall construction in comfort tests. 4 centuries of performance data, and we decided plastic-wrapped gypsum boards were the upgrade. Makes you wonder what else we threw out just because it seemed too simple. Speaking of things that look primitive but actually outperform modern alternatives, wait until you see what medieval builders did with sticks and mud. Wattle and daub sounds like a disease your grandmother might warn you about, but it's actually one of the smartest building techniques humans ever invented. Medieval builders wove flexible branches between wooden posts. Then they packed the gaps with a mixture of clay, animal dung, and straw. Sounds disgusting. Works beautifully. Here's what modern engineers didn't expect to find. Those woven branches create natural air pockets throughout the wall, dead air spaces. And dead air is one of the best insulators known to physics. These crude-looking walls actually perform as well as fiberglass bats we spend thousands on today. But wait, it gets better. Once the clay mixture dries completely, these walls become essentially fireproof. You cannot burn dried clay. It just sits there, mocking your matches. Meanwhile, modern homes go up like kindling because we wrapped everything in paper-faced foam and vinyl. A family in Wales needed to repair their farmhouse walls. The original wattle and daub, 600 years old, still standing. Their total repair cost came to under $200 in materials. Try getting a drywall contractor out for that price. They won't even return your call. Insurance companies refuse to cover it. Code inspectors won't approve it. Yet buildings using this technique have survived longer than entire civilizations. The beauty is the simplicity. Any flexible wood works, any clay soil works, any fibrous plant matter works. Your ancestors built warm, fireproof homes using whatever they could find in a 1-mile radius. Speaking of using local materials, the next technique takes that idea underground. Your grandparents had refrigerators. Your great-great-grandparents had something better. They dug holes in the ground. Root cellars kept food cold for centuries before anyone invented a compressor. And here's the wild part. They still work better than your kitchen fridge for certain things. 10 feet underground, the temperature stays around 55 degrees Fahrenheit. Doesn't matter if it's July or January, the earth just holds steady. Medieval families figured this out and built underground chambers that maintain temperatures between 32 and 40 degrees year-round. 0 electricity, 0 moving parts, 0 monthly bills. Apples lasted 6 months down there. Potatoes, a full year. Canned goods basically forever. But try building one today and watch what happens. Health departments call them unregulated cold storage and won't let you use them for any commercial food operation. The USDA's own research confirms root cellar conditions match commercial cold storage for produce preservation. Their own scientists said it works. Still banned. The reason? Can't inspect what's underground, can't standardize a hole in the dirt, doesn't fit the paperwork. Meanwhile, people lose entire freezers full of meat every time the power goes out. I've been there. $100 worth of food gone because a transformer blew. A buried shipping container, a concrete culvert, even a hand-dug chamber. Any of these can become a working root cellar in a weekend. But storing food underground isn't the only banned practice that kept people healthy. What about the water they drank? Now here's where things get a little weird. Medieval tanners figured out something that sounds absolutely crazy. They preserved animal hides using the animal's own brain tissue. I know, sounds like some medieval witchcraft, but it works better than anything we've invented since. And get this, every single animal has exactly enough brain matter to tan its own hide. Every single one. Deer, elk, cow, doesn't matter. Medieval folks called this providence. Scientists call it a remarkable coincidence. I call it nature showing off. The leather that comes out of this process, unmatched. Brain-tanned leather stays flexible when it gets soaking wet. Let it dry and it's soft again. Try that with your fancy store-bought leather jacket. It'll crack like a politician's promises. So why aren't we doing this anymore? Commercial tanning regulations basically killed it. You need chemical treatments now, facility inspections, pages of compliance paperwork, all for a process that requires nothing but brains, water, smoke, and elbow grease. Here's the proof it works. Native American buckskin shirts from the 1800s, still pliable today. You can literally wear them. Meanwhile, that designer leather bag you bought in 1995 probably crumbled into dust years ago. No purchased chemicals, no electricity, no special equipment, just ancient knowledge that outperforms modern chemistry. But wait until you hear about the next one. Medieval folks figured out how to get unlimited clean water without pumps, electricity, or monthly bills. So you've got this perfect spring bubbling up on your property. Crystal clear water, cold as ice, flowing year-round. Free hydration for life, right? Not so fast. Medieval communities figured this out centuries ago. They built stone chambers directly over natural springs, then ran pipes downhill to their homes. No pumps, no electricity, just gravity doing all the work forever. The system is stupidly simple. Water rises from underground, fills a sealed stone box that keeps out leaves and animals, then flows through pipes to wherever you need it. The pressure comes from elevation alone. Higher spring, stronger flow. That's it. And here's what makes it brilliant. The water's already filtered. It spent years seeping through layers of rock and soil before reaching the surface. Nature did the heavy lifting. Researchers actually tested spring boxes throughout Appalachia that families have used for generations. Bacterial counts came back lower than EPA standards for municipal tap water. Let that sink in. Untreated spring water beating city water that's been chemically processed. But try installing one today and watch what happens. Most states require drilled wells with electric pumps and pressure tanks. A gravity-fed spring doesn't fit the permit categories, so it's effectively banned for new construction. Meanwhile, one family in Vermont has used the exact same spring box since 1847. 0 maintenance days, 0 electric bills, 0 problems. 177 years of free, clean water. But getting water clean is only half the battle. What about purifying water that starts out dirty? Medieval monasteries had a secret weapon against bad water. And no, it wasn't prayers. They built these simple sand beds. Water went in dirty at the top, came out clean at the bottom. Monks didn't know why it worked. They just knew it did. Here's what they accidentally discovered. After a few weeks, something magical forms on top of that sand. Scientists call it the Schmutzdecke, German word. Sounds like a sneeze, acts like a superhero. This layer is basically a living ecosystem of beneficial organisms. They eat the bad stuff. Bacteria, parasites, pathogens. Dinner. The numbers are ridiculous. A properly maintained slow sand filter removes 99.9% of parasites, up to 99% of bacteria, even most viruses. No chlorine, no chemicals, just sand doing its thing. But here's the kicker. Modern regulations say water treatment must include chemical disinfection. Sand-only systems don't qualify. Doesn't matter that they work better than many chemical treatments. London figured this out the hard way during the cholera outbreaks of the 1850s. Nothing else stopped people from dying. Slow sand filtration did. The city that basically invented modern plumbing solved its biggest health crisis with medieval technology. Want to build one yourself? 2 food-grade barrels, some gravel, sand, and basic plumbing fittings. Total cost is maybe $50. My grandfather would have called that a no-brainer. Speaking of simple solutions our ancestors figured out, the next one involves something you'd never put near your food. unless you're medieval. Now here's one that makes modern pest control companies look ridiculous. Medieval people didn't spray chemicals everywhere when bugs showed up. They just walked outside, grabbed some herbs, and scattered them across their floors. Sounds like Grandma's folk remedy, right? Well, turns out Grandma was basically a chemist. Tansy, pennyroyal, wormwood. These plants contain natural pyrethrins, the exact same compounds that Raid and other commercial insecticides use today. Medieval households were deploying industrial-grade pest control using stuff growing in their gardens, and the results were impressive. Fleas, lice, flies, even rodents. Gone. Queen Elizabeth I demanded fresh meadowsweet strewn throughout her chambers. Not because she was fancy, because it killed fleas while making everything smell like honey. The woman ran an empire. She didn't have time for bug bites. Here's what's wild, though. Fresh mint scattered in pantries repels mice so effectively that grain storage facilities are now actually studying the practice. Multi-billion-dollar agricultural operations looking at medieval housewife techniques. If that doesn't tell you something, nothing will. But good luck selling this commercially. Modern EPA regulations on pest control claims make it basically illegal to market these traditional methods. You can spray synthetic chemicals everywhere. That's fine. Scatter some mint. Now we need paperwork. The best part is the cost. $0. A weekly harvest from your garden provides continuous pest control with no toxicity whatsoever. Speaking of things that cost nothing but work better than expensive alternatives, medieval travelers had a water purification trick that modern filter companies really don't want you knowing about. Here's the thing about medieval travelers. They weren't stupid. When they came across sketchy water, they didn't just pray and drink. They dropped chunks of charred wood into it. Sounds crazy, right? But they were accidentally creating activated carbon filtration hundreds of years before anyone understood why it worked. The science is actually wild. Charcoal is riddled with microscopic pores, millions of them, and these tiny tunnels trap chlorine, pesticides, heavy metals, and organic compounds through a process called adsorption. The bad stuff literally sticks to the surface. Get this. 1 pound of activated charcoal has a surface area of 100 acres. That's not a typo. Acres. All those internal pores create more surface area than a small farm. Now here's where it gets funny. Japanese Binchotan charcoal, made using methods basically unchanged since medieval times, now sells for $30 per stick to health-conscious Americans. $30 for burnt wood. My grandfather would have laughed himself to tears. The real kicker? You can make effective water-filtering charcoal in your backyard. Burn hardwood in a sealed container until no smoke escapes. That's it. Same principle, zero cost. Is this knowledge banned? Not exactly, but it's been completely buried under expensive commercial filters doing the exact same thing. Your $40 Brita cartridge? Activated carbon? That fancy pitcher filter? Activated carbon. Medieval peasants figured this out with campfire leftovers, but filtering water is one thing. Preserving food without refrigeration? That's where things get really interesting. Your grandparents didn't have refrigerators. They had something better. Fermented preservation kept food safe for months at room temperature. No electricity, no special equipment, just salt, a crock, and patience. Here's how it works. You pack vegetables in salt, submerge them in water, and wait. Natural bacteria on the vegetables start producing lactic acid. That acid drops the pH so low that the bad stuff, botulism, salmonella, E. coli, literally cannot survive. It's like creating a hostile environment where only the good guys win. Captain Cook sailed for years and lost 0 men to scurvy. His secret? Barrels of fermented cabbage, sauerkraut. The vitamin C actually becomes more available after fermentation than in fresh vegetables. Your body absorbs it better. But try selling grandma's pickles at a farmer's market today. Health departments require pasteurization or commercial canning equipment. The fermentation methods that kept humanity alive for thousands of years are now considered unsafe for commercial sale. Meanwhile, we're all popping probiotic supplements that contain the exact same bacteria found in a jar of homemade kimchi. The irony is thick enough to spread on toast. A head of cabbage, some salt, and a mason jar can produce preserved food lasting months. The process is so foolproof that you have to actively try to mess it up. Keep it submerged, keep it cool, and nature handles the rest. Speaking of natural processes, there's another medieval coating that kills bacteria on contact, and it costs about $8 for enough to cover your entire house. Your grandparents knew something paint companies don't want you to remember. That bright white you see on old farmhouses and Mediterranean villages, that's not paint. It's lime whitewash, and it does something modern paint never will. It kills bacteria on contact. Medieval farmers figured out that slaked lime mixed with water created a coating with a pH so high that mold, fungus, and bacteria simply couldn't survive touching it. They painted it on everything. Barns, cellars, chicken coops, even hospital walls. And here's what's wild. Studies of traditional Mediterranean homes found whitewashed walls showed 60% less mold than walls covered in modern paint. 60%. But try finding whitewash at your local hardware store. Good luck. VOC regulations and paint industry marketing have pushed this stuff off shelves entirely. Meanwhile, we're buying antimicrobial paints loaded with chemicals for $40 a gallon. The benefits go beyond germ killing, though. Lime whitewash lets walls breathe. Moisture passes right through instead of getting trapped and causing rot. It also reflects heat, keeping buildings noticeably cooler in summer. That's why every Greek island looks like a postcard of white buildings. The real kicker? A 50-pound bag of hydrated lime costs $8. $8. That's enough to coat an entire barn. Multiple coats. Your great-grandfather could protect his whole farm for the price of a fancy coffee. But killing germs isn't the only forgotten fire prevention method from the Middle Ages, because the next technique involves something unexpected. Sheep. Here's the thing about California wildfires. Everyone blames climate change. Everyone blames power lines. Everyone blames dry conditions. But almost nobody talks about the sheep. Medieval communities figured this out centuries ago. They grazed sheep and goats on hillsides surrounding their villages for one specific reason: fire prevention. These animals eat exactly what burns hottest: dry grass, brush, invasive weeds, all gone. And here's the kicker. While they're eating, they're fertilizing the soil. It's a 2-for-1 deal that costs basically nothing. Then, modern environmental regulations came along. Grazing on public lands got severely restricted. The brush piled up year after year after year. The numbers tell the story. Before grazing restrictions, California wildfires burned an average of 4.2 million fewer acres annually. That's not a typo. 4.2 million acres. Now cities are catching on. Oakland started contracting sheep herds to clear hillsides around neighborhoods. The cost? 75% less than sending crews with machinery. Plus, the sheep don't need gas money or lunch breaks, although my father-in-law doesn't either when there's free food involved. A small flock of 20 sheep can clear an entire acre of brush in 2 weeks. Minimal supervision required, no noise complaints, no exhaust fumes. We banned a fire prevention method that worked for 1,000 years, then acted surprised when everything started burning. But fire isn't the only medieval preservation trick we forgot. Wait until you hear how long a piece of smoked meat could actually last. Medieval smokehouses kept meat edible for years, not months, years. And the secret wasn't some complicated process. It was literally just smoke. When wood burns slowly, it releases over 200 different compounds: formaldehyde, phenols, organic acids. Sounds scary, right? But these compounds create an invisible armor on meat that bacteria simply cannot penetrate. Here's what's wild. Monks in medieval monasteries documented hams lasting up to 7 years without any refrigeration. 7 years. My leftovers don't last 7 days. The key was cold smoking. You kept the temperature low, let the smoke work for weeks, and the result was meat that could survive a journey across Europe. But here's where modern regulations mess everything up. The USDA requires smoking to hit specific internal temperatures, which means the old cold smoke methods that actually worked best are technically non-compliant. We traded thousands of years of proven preservation for rules written by people who've never smoked anything except maybe a brisket at a backyard barbecue. The science backs up the medieval method completely. Smoke creates an acidic, oxygen-free coating on the surface. Bacteria need moisture and oxygen. Take those away, and meat becomes basically immortal. You can build a functional smokehouse from an old refrigerator or a metal drum. Some people use cardboard boxes for cold smoking fish. So there you have it. 15 technologies your ancestors used daily that we've somehow forgotten, banned, or regulated into oblivion. Maybe it's time we started remembering.